Well, let's see. Before I forget it, I remembered Laverne, my mother's sister, Helen, oldest girl's husband's name was Hancock, Richard Hancock. I have to put that in there before I forget it, because I couldn't think of it earlier, and I thought of it while I was kind of resting, and I want to get that in there because I'll probably forget it again. You know. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about was Laverne and Richard. They bought a place down in close to Maybank in a little town called Gun Barrel, called it was close to a lake, and I swear to God, I can't remember the name of that lake. I'm gonna have to look it up. I should, because I built a house down there once, but my mind just won't tell me what that is. But anyway, I wanted to get that on here before I started talking here, getting too deep. I don't remember what the heck I was talking about earlier, to tell you the darn truth. I don't know where I was, but I did remember that I believe I had another uncle on my mother's side, and I thought of his name, but I can't remember it. If it comes to me, I'll remember it. It was God dog. It's gonna be hard trying to remember all these. Boy, we're going back, gosh, 75 years, you know. A lot of that stuff, you can forget a lot of things, 75 years. I was trying to think. He had one more brother than the ones I named, but that gum, if I can remember. The reason I remembered his name while I was resting, I thought about his wife's name, and I got thinking, why did I remember that name? And all of a sudden it hit me, oh, that was the wife of one of my mother's brothers. I forgot all about him. And I forgot it again. I didn't write it down, so I forgot it again. You know. He evidently, I don't even remember seeing him. I just remember him talking about him. I can't even remember ever having seen him. I might have, but I don't remember it. But he can't even remember his wife's name now. That came to me while I was resting up. I was thinking about all that stuff. But anyway, if I think about it, I'll mention it no matter where I'm at. If it pops into my mind, you wait. Some of you younger folks, you're probably gonna think I'm nuttier than a fruitcake. But I guarantee you, you'll have the same problem when you get to be nearly 84 years old. I'd be lucky I can even remember my own name, let alone somebody else's. You know? But anyway, wish I could think of that. Well, never mind. Let's talk about something else. Maybe it'll come to me later on. If it don't, well, we just have to let it go. I can only put on here what I can remember. If I can't remember it, I can't put it on here. But I'm gonna go back to. I'm trying to start with as early as I can remember, and I told you earlier that I remembered when I was in diapers underneath the quilting party thing. Yeah, I won't go through that again, but then I got to remember that I remember playing over at that house, over at my grandmother's house. It was across. We were on Bertrand Street, about 3 houses away from Sain Road, and Sain Road run from 2nd Avenue, which was in the city limits, which the city limits sign for Dallas was right there at. It was right there at Sain Road as you turn off to go on to. You turn off of. Oh God! Now I've lost the name of that thing. Anyway, as you first turn on to Sain Road, there was a city limit sign there, and it seemed to me like it was 200 and somewhere around 250,000, 180,000, something like that. There wasn't all that many people in Dallas back in them days. It wasn't all a big city like it is now. You know, it anyway. Going out that city, you come down, I don't know, several blocks, and you'll run into Bertrand Street, which really actually crossed Sain Road, but it made a dog leg right after it went across. And I don't remember the other street that went up to the school that I went to, which was Lego School. But I do remember that I remember that there was a railroad track. There was Sain Road, and then there was a railroad track right next to Sain Road. And my grandmother lived on the other side of that railroad track, on the other side of Sain Road, and across the railroad track. There was 3 houses over there, and it was my grandmother in the left one. There was 3 of them. If you're looking at them from my house, where the house was I lived in, it would be on the left. The left one's where my grandmother lived. The middle one was where Conrad lived, and the one on the right was where, Oscar. And anyway, if I can think of that. They had one more brother other than I mentioned earlier, but I can't. My mother had one more brother. I remembered his name because I remembered his wife's name. Then I remembered him, but I can't remember it right now. I remember it and I've lost it. I'll think of it earlier. I'll just stick it in here somewhere. You know, if it's next week or whatever, it may or may not ever come to me. Anyway, I did think of Laverne's. Whether I mentioned it or not, I did think of Laverne's husband's name. Last name was oh God, I wrote it down. It was Hancock. See what I mean? In other words, his name was Richard Hancock, and it was Laverne Hancock was her name. She had three children, and I really don't know what sex they were, because I remember she had 3 children, but I don't know their names. I don't know where they're at. Were they around Dallas, or were they left Dallas, or where they're at? I don't know anything. Boy, I mean to tell you, you go back 75 years. When they moved, I don't know if them kids were with them. I don't know nothing about them. All I know is that only reason I know a little bit about them is because my sister and her second husband bought the house down in Gun Barrel that when Laverne got old and got put into a old folks home, my sister and her husband, Ed Walford, my sister's name was, the second husband was Kathleen Walford, and her husband's name was Ed Walford. They bought the house off of Laverne Hancock. Evidently, Richard had died. A lot of this stuff now, I'm just surmising because I really don't know what the actual facts about it, so just bear with me here. But I know that they bought that house down there. It was right on the creek, and I can't think of the name of the darn creek. I'm going to have to look it up. It's ridiculous that I can't think of the name of that creek, because I built a house down there on that creek, you know, right on the darn, right on the lake. It was in one of them subdivisions down there, and I can't even remember the name of that. Like I say, when you get to be 84 and your old mind, your old ticker starts skipping a few notches, it's kind of aggravating, but there ain't nothing I can do about it. I ain't gonna get mad about it, and if it bothers you, we'll just throw the book away. I mean, I'm gonna put these on CDs. I thought about writing a book, but boy, let me tell you, that would have been a major problem. In the first place, I'd have to sit down and write, and I can't spell doodly squat, and I couldn't punctuate nothing, and it would be the biggest mess you ever saw in your life. And then I decided, well, that being the case, I'll I'll record it, and then I'll have it printed out, and we can put it and spell check it and everything. And we thought about that for a while. In fact, I said a bunch of stuff on it. I spoke into it and done a bunch of talking and everything about early age, and then it come to my attention that if we put that like that, we're gonna have to put it into a book. Boy, that's gonna be one tremendous job. And then we said, well, we're gonna record it, and then we're gonna see what we can do with it. And all of a sudden it hit me and said, well, why don't we just make CDs with it? I'll just record it. I won't have to write no books. I won't have to do no spelling or punctuation, because I couldn't do it anyway. And it would, I'd have to hire it done. I ain't gonna do that. I'm just gonna make all these recordings. I don't know how many CDs it'll come up with. But I'm gonna keep talking till I die. I don't know how long that'll be. Because I got a zillion things to talk about. Not that anybody gives a cotton picking baloney about it. I mean, I'm sure you're not interested, but I'm gonna say it anyway, because I'm just sick of looking at these people, these PhDs. Every book I pick up seems to be done by a PhD, and then he's got 4 or 5 other PhDs that spells checks it or whatever they do. They got, it's been looked over by somebody. Hell, I can't remember what they got in the front of the book. They always say somebody. He always names 3 or 4 people that has looked it over or something. I don't know what they do. All a bunch of hooey anyway. Most of the crap that they put up with is just a bunch of bull crap. Of course, all them people's got them PhDs. They don't think much of people like me. That's one of the reasons I want to write one of these things, and not write it, but mark down what they didn't live in the real world. Hell, they lived they seem like all of them write that stuff, PhDs. How do you manage to stay in college long enough to get a PhD unless you got somebody furnishing you some money? They couldn't possibly. I think if anybody says that they worked their way through a PhD, I think they're liars. I call them a liar. I don't think they could do it. Hell, I had a hard time just making a living. And the money I had, with all the money I bought, I had to get a car. I had to buy clothes. I had to spend it all on trying to live. How could you spend it all going to college? Unless your folks were helping you and stuff. Of course, the time that I went to college, my folks paid for that, but they weren't. that was. Let me tell you, that cost my folks. I don't know. I really felt bad about not being able to finish it, but I just could not spell. English stopped me. I just didn't give a darn, to tell you the truth. I didn't want to learn English. I mean, it seems stupid to go to college and somebody tell you had to learn to speak English. Hell, I already knew how to speak English. I couldn't have got into the college if I didn't know how to speak English. And I'm not going to be any, well, I am recording this, but I ain't recording it with no English. If you don't like it, don't read it. I don't give a damn what you do. You don't mean doodly squat to me. I'm just going to have this down. I'm so sick of looking at all these books and stuff, and all these people writes that's got them PhDs, and all these PhDs and people look them over and say, yeah, this is a good book, this is a good book. Boy, they give them a big recommendation. This is one of the best books I ever saw on this subject, and it's all a bunch of damned hooey. In fact, I finally read, there's one, they're beginning to come up with some of the PhDs are beginning to debunk, if you will, if that's the right word. Debunk means is they're calling Einstein's theory of relativity a bunch of gobbledygook, which I spent some time one time. I was reading a book trying to understand this theory of relativity, and I come to a page where they had all kind of calculus symbols and things on it, and I was having a little bit of trouble trying to understand, what he was talking about. This boy, you're riding along on a light wave, going the speed of light, and you're looking at a subject, and then you got another guy, a person or whatever, standing off somewhere else, and he's looking at the same subject you are, and y'all don't see the same thing. And I said, wow, how could that be, I mean, we're looking at the same thing. How come we don't see the same thing, But then I turned this page. I was trying to go get another, turn over another page and read some more stuff, see if it could explain to me what he's talking about. And there was this whole page full of calculus symbols. And I said, oh, look at there. Man, I remember when I was in college, I took a calculus course. I said, I'm going to go back to college and I'm going to take a calculus course. So I did, believe it or not. On account of that book, in that particular page, I went to one of these, what do you call them? They're not one of those bona fide, highfalutin colleges. They oh hell, they got a name for them. Anyway, it was a community college, one of them community colleges, and I signed up for a calculus course, and I studied it. I went off in a bunch of bookstores and things, sold used books, bought two or three books on calculus, and I went to the back of them. I didn't read the darn thing, but I went to the back, and I worked all the problems. I mean, there were 3 different books. Gosh, there must have been 60 problems, 15 or 20 in each book. And I worked every one of them. Boy, it took me a while. But when I took the final exam, it was Eastfield College here in, I think it's out in Mesquite. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's Eastfield College, wherever the devil is located. I went to it. Anyway, I went to the whole course and everything, and the final exam come up, and the teacher, instructor, wherever the devil, the guy, whatever you call these people that teaches that kind of stuff. I call them teachers, but I call them something else, some highfalutin name of some sort. Anyhow, I was sitting there, and they handed the test out. I was working like a devil, boy, and I had about maybe 2 or 3 more problems to go. There was a bunch of problems on that thing. I had about 2 or 3 more problems to go, and I just happened to look up. I looked around, and Lord have mercy, I'm the only one in the class that's left. I looked up, and the instructor was sitting up there, and he was grading papers, it looked like. I don't know what he was doing. I'm just guessing he was grading papers. But anyway, I looked at him for a second or two, and I went back, and I said, well, he ain't told me to leave, so I'm going to stay with it. Anyway, I finally worked all 3 of the last problems, and I walked by his desk, laid it on his desk. I never said nothing. I just laid it on his desk and walked out. Well, a couple of days later, that instructor or teacher or PhD or whatever he was, he called me at home and told me that I was the first person in 16 years that had ever aced his final exam. So the only reason I'm telling you that, folks, is because I'm not exactly an idiot. Even though I was brought up on a country farm, and I rode, as people make fun of, and a lot of the sophisticated people and the city folks like to say, I actually did arrive to town on a turnip truck. And I am damned proud of it. And I don't care. You can take your education and you can shove it sideways, where. The Bible says that you ain't careful, you can educate yourself into being a complete damned idiot. And I believe that, because I see all this junk. I'm not going to get off on a religious kick right now, but before this is over with, I'm going to tell you what I think of you atheists, pieces of crap. So if you're an atheist, throw the book away, because I ain't talking to you anyway. I don't give a damn what happens to you. You can kiss it where the sun don't shine. You people have ruined this country. But that's beside the point. I'm going to go back try to talk about how the country was when I grew up and what a great country it was before you sons of bitches showed up. And if you don't like my saying bad words, I don't say them when I'm around Christian folks. I only say them when I know damn well that there's one of you folks out there somewhere. See, because I ain't got no use for you folks at all. You know, I've lived in this country back when there was a bunch of good folks in it, and now there ain't nothing but crap like you in it, you know. But anyway, let's get back to where I was at. I'm trying to give my life here. You know, there might be somebody out there want to read it. Somebody that it ain't all been twisted around with you atheist crap that you come up with. But anyway, I never intended to get into religions this quick. Let's get back to just living. When I was a kid, I got past the point. I'm trying to think of the. If I ever think of that, my mother had another brother, Eileen. Eileen was his wife's name. Gosh, I can't think of his name. But anyway, that kind of stumps me for a while. I'm kind of lost my train of thought here because I had his name and then I lost it. It just came to me when I was resting up there. But maybe it'll come to me again if it's next week or two or day, maybe next month. I'll think of it. Who knows? I know I was trying to think of something here about a month ago, and boy, I thought, and I couldn't think of it. And a couple of days later, I was reading the book, and all of a sudden that name just popped up in my mind. So them old synapses or whatever you call them. Whatever these fancy doctors and philosophers and people that studies the brain and all that stuff, they call them little things in your brain there synapses, I think, or something like that. Them little boogers must have been working for 2 or 3 days. I wasn't trying to think of that word. I don't even remember what it was. But I remember it just popping up all of a sudden. I was reading a book, and all of a sudden that word just popped up, and I said, holy moly. I tried to think of that 3 days ago. Got a dog going crazy here. I don't know what he's barking about. But anyway, where was I at here? I'm going to have to quit this thing, find out what this dog's barking about, so I'm going to stop the thing for a while.